In this lecture, we'll talk through a basic model for organizing your ideas. What is this basic model? It's an argument. Now, I know like a lot of people are going to hear that and they're going to want to shut off the video, but don't. Because when I say argument, I don't mean argumentativeness. I don't mean somebody being a jerk. No, you're wrong. I don't mean that. An argument at a basic level is just a statement with support or elaboration. So for example, I'm a faculty member at the University of Washington. That's a statement that allows me to elaborate, and that's what I mean when I say argument. Now, this model of argument comes from the work of Stephen Toulmin. He was a British philosopher. Originally, Toulmin's model was a way of describing arguments, but it has some real uses for us because this model can help you write clearer speeches. So what I'd like to do in this video is focus on three core components of his model. So first, we have claims. Now, a claim is just an assertion that you want the audience to take as valid. So this is the thing you want the audience to remember or to understand or to believe or whatever. In a key point speech, your key points are usually claims. So we've got claims. Next, we have support. Support's just the evidence and information used to illustrate and validate the claim. So you can use examples, statistics, whatever. The support shows that you're grounding the claim on something. Now, support by itself doesn't validate the claim. As a speaker, you need to explain how and why the support relates to the claim. Now, that's the warrant. It's what links the support to the claim. So those are the basic components of an argument. Now, think about argument as forming a chunk of talk. You put a couple of related chunks together and boom, you got yourself a speech. So, for example, here's a key point speech describing my job as a speech professor. So as you can see here, I've got three key points. Now, each key point is a claim. So each Roman numeral here is a claim. Now, these aren't wildly controversial claims, right? I teach, I do service. But these are the things in this speech I want people to remember. If you take a look at the next level, each example, is support. So each A and B on this outline are just pieces of support I use to explain the claim. So as I look at this, I'd probably spend about 2 minutes, maybe a little bit longer on each key point. And in each key point, what I'm doing is I'm explaining the claim, support, and warrant. And that's a short speech. But if you've got more complex or longer speeches, generally you're just looking at more chunks. So here's another example. This is an hour-long lecture I give on part of Aristotle's book, The Rhetoric. So you can see it here. I group my key points into larger sections. So I put together three claims about how Aristotle defines rhetoric. And then I've got three key points about how he classifies speeches. And so each section here is probably about 25 minutes. And each point has examples and evidence, and I didn't include that on the slide because it'd just take up too much space. But if we look at that first point, for example, in that point I would talk about how rhetoric is like dialectic. Now see, this is an important point for Aristotle, and that's my claim here. I want to explain that claim through historical and textual support. So in that chunk of talk, I talk about how rhetoric and dialectic are both methods, how both deal with questions, so on and so forth. But all of my discussion in that section is just meant to explain why, for Aristotle, rhetoric's like dialectic, because that's the key point I want students to remember, right? That's what I want them to understand. Everything I'm going to be talking about in that section is driven by the need to explain the claim that I'm trying to unpack there. So obviously, an argument model is appropriate for speeches that need to be clear. It's not probably a great model for poetry.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?
You bet I shall. I'm going to compare you to a summer's day for 3 reasons. So don't do that. It doesn't fit. It doesn't work, right? But what do you get by approaching appropriate speeches from an argument standpoint? Well, you get focus. Remember, in a speech, your audience isn't going to remember everything you have to say. And I don't mean that as like a negative comment about you. You're boring. You should dislike your... How do you stay awake when talking to yourself? I don't mean it like that. I mean it as a comment about the human brain. We're just not built to retain each and every word that you say. So as a speaker, you need to prioritize. What are the really important ideas? And this argument model prioritizes claims. They're the bits you want people to remember. Now, support is in there, and it's important, but its job is to clarify and strengthen the claim. And focusing on warrants helps the audience understand the relationship between support and claim. So, argument doesn't always mean shouting. It can mean logical relationships, and that's why it can help us in making our speeches clearer.